been on about 7 or 8 calls this week, and
Uh-huh.
some have gone very well, some have gone not so well, and it's been a fun, kind of a fun adventure doing some of these.
Yeah, I would agree.
I just
There
got
are a
off a great call with Steve May. He's with the Kentucky Horse Racing Commission. Wonderful guy that I met through a networking gathering. And he and I were talking about the difference in these virtual meetings as opposed to in-person meetings. And we got into some of the tips and tricks that we have found to be improving those meeting experiences.
In some of the calls that I've been on is that there's a number of things that have been distracting and have been impacting the productivity of the meeting. And so I thought maybe I could just highlight one thing that I've noticed about your call is that your audio is amazing. How are you getting your audio to be so good?
Well, thanks. I really take a lot of pride in this, actually. I'm actually a ham radio operator, so audio quality is something that's very important to me. I think one thing that's very important is people really rely on the microphones that are built into their webcams, or even worse, their computers, and they may not even realize how bad that actually sounds. Those are really meant to pick up audio from the entire room instead of audio straight on. I've actually been using, you might be able to see it a little bit in the camera here. I use a microphone from the Blue company, BLUE. It's called the Blue Yeti on this particular one. It's got a lot of things that I really like in it. It has inline audio, so I've got headphones in and I can actually hear myself and hear the audio. So I'm not being distracted by the sound from around the room. It also has a physical mute button on there. So when I'm in a meeting, I need to mute myself, even if it's just a cough, just quickly. If I'm going to cough or need to take a drink or something, I can reach up, hit that mute button. I can do whatever I need to do and then hit that again. And if I need to pause myself or unpause myself, I'm not looking for a software mute button on the software. So it's really handy to have that.
Yeah, I would agree. That is a nice feature. I use a microphone too. Mine does not have a mute button like yours, but it's still useful in terms of being able to pick up my sound quality of my voice better than my computer would, or even the built-in speaker in a webcam would.
Yeah, this having any kind of an external microphone, it's going to eliminate the sounds from your computer. It's going to eliminate a lot of that ambient sound that you hear from around the room. Any of these work better really than the microphones that are built into the webcams. They've come a long way, I will say that. And sometimes that's all you have, and so you kind of have to stick with what you have. But
Yeah.
if at all possible, if you can use an external microphone, you're going to do much better.
What about your video setup? What kind of setup do you have?
Well, it's kind of the same thing. The built-in webcam in most computers, they suffice. They do a decent job, but I use a Logitech. I actually have a fairly older Logitech camera right now. It's a combination of the camera and the lighting that's important for doing good video.
Yes, I would agree. I would definitely agree. I have found that having the light in front of you so that the light is facing you is most ideal. I have a temporary setup right now where I am, and the light is shining from above me, which is less appealing than I think having it shining directly on you. What kind of solution have you found for getting the light to shine so nicely directly on you?
Well, what I like to do is, as you can see behind me, I just open up the windows in my room, so it lets a lot of that natural light in. If it's during the daytime, obviously. I also just took a small LED lamp that I think I bought it at Walmart. It was just a cheap lamp, and the nice thing is it's flexible, and so it's got a pretty nice soft LED light on it, and it's flexible, so I could point it up just a little bit over me, but it's generally coming from the front. And
Yeah.
I've been really happy with this. It's a really cheap, easy solution. It's not portable, unfortunately. I have to plug it into a wall, but when I'm sitting at my desk, it seems to work really well.
Yeah, that's really great. So, in any of your meetings, have people doing any screen sharing with you? Have you used that feature?
Screen share has been very important and very interesting. I've seen a lot of different things come from this. Some things I would really recommend people really think about, and because a lot of these things people just haven't thought about. They don't
Yeah.
understand that the audio quality or the video quality may not be
Mm-hmm.
that great. And with a few small tweaks and a small investment, they can make some improvements on there. um, watch your open links, watch anything that you've got open that, if you're in a professional meeting, you don't want to have your fantasy sports teams, their pages loaded up on there. You don't want,
Right.
I try to avoid any political things, anything generally that you wouldn't want to have in a regular meeting.
Right.
Desktop backgrounds. I saw one person share their screen and I got a glimpse of their desktop background. And it was something that I quite frankly should have embarrassed them a little bit. And I think it probably did. I didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've
Mm-hmm.
also seen people that have sensitive documents open, and when they screen share, they might inadvertently share some of those sensitive documents and privileged documents from another client, for instance. So those are just some things to really think about and make
Yeah.
sure, try to clean up your desk. Basically, is kind of the way you need to think about it, and make sure that there's nothing sitting out, just like you're at a regular meeting. You don't want something sitting out on your desk that might embarrass you. So
Right.
think about those things on a virtual meeting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when we're talking about having a virtual meeting, we do need to really liken it to meeting in person. Like even the angle of your camera right now, it's straight on your face as opposed to having it down low and I'm looking up at your chin or up your nose, even worse, right? And I think that having the angle of your camera facing you directly is so valuable because then it feels more like a face-to-face meeting. And so maybe that's something people can take a look at, raising their computer up if they need to, having it stacked on some books or boxes, even if it's just during the meeting, so that it is at the right level or the right position for people.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, just look at any kind of interview you see on TV. You
Yeah.
don't see it coming up, you don't see it coming down. You see generally
Mhm.
from the top of the head, maybe just over the head down to about the mid chest area, and that's kind of what you try to replicate that if at all possible. And it's really,
Can you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on the background and in the room and environment people are meeting in?
well, I think I can probably see behind me. I've got the door shut. I'm home alone, but simply shutting the door sometimes is really all you need to do. I mean, I understand it's
Mhm.
really difficult for everybody right now. We've got daycare shut down, schools are shut down, so we've got kids at the house, we've got spouses or significant others at the house, and sometimes you can't really control the environment.
But I do think taking a little bit of time to prepare your room or the space that you're working in is so important because then you are ready for when the call does
Because
happen.
it's just necessity. But some of them are doing these calls from their cars, and that's something I kind of shudder when I see that every time. I can tell
Yeah.
they're using their cell phone in the car. Maybe your only option, and if that's the case, then you have to just make the best of it. But some things we can control, and trying to just keep all the ambient noise out of the room that you can. Try to eliminate
Mhm.
people behind you. Anything like that you can do can really make these better. Just like things sitting out on your desk, if you're in a room and you have a poster of some celebrity or something, it's very unprofessional. And so
Mhm.
try to find an area where you don't have that. I'm actually moving right now, so I'm not necessarily practicing what I preach, because I don't, it's kind of very plain. But I really like your background, Carrie, with it, and it's just a nice picture. Just adds something to the
Thank
just a
you.
little bit of warmth to that setting, and I think it's a
Thanks.
really nice job.
Thank you. But I will say that I much prefer the plain background that you've got than some of the backgrounds I've been seeing during meetings because a background that has a lot in the scene behind you is very distracting during meeting. I find that I'm like looking at the pictures on the background, or if there are posters or things that just don't feel professional to me, I'm distracted by them. I know that a lot of people are working out of their homes right now. It's out
Yeah.
of necessity. We don't have the option necessarily to like really transform a room. But a simple solution, like I did here in the background, was just merely taking a picture out of my bedroom and putting it in this space because I felt like it would be a decent background. It literally took me 2 minutes to move that picture.
Yeah.
And so if people just sit and test out their screen and put the picture behind them and just see if that works, it really doesn't take that long, but it does help, I think, up the professional level of your meeting.
Yeah.
About. But one of the, I think, important things that a lot of people are struggling with is preparation. preparation for a meeting, the flow of a meeting is so crucial to the level of productivity that happens during that meeting. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, and there's some really simple things you can do to be ready for this. Have your notes out, or whatever your note taking
Mm-hmm.
uh, method is, whether that's handwritten notes, digital notes. Find some way to do that. If you need to add a second screen, sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Little things you can do though are just having links open and ready. If you know you're going to have to share a link with somebody, have that open and ready. If you know you're going to have to share 3 different PDF documents, have those open and ready. Maybe have that folder where those files are located so you can easily email those back and forth. Little things you can do like that, and don't be afraid if there are other people that are distracting the meeting. Some of these video conferencing tools will let you just go through and mute that person yourself, but don't be afraid to ask them to mute their line if they are causing distractions. Some people don't even realize they're causing those distractions in the background, but
Yeah.
don't be afraid to do those things. So
Exactly.
those can make a meeting go much smoother.
Yes, I would agree. I would add to that in terms of the meeting flow, whomever is the host of the meeting should be guiding the meeting. And so there are features within some of these video tools that allow people to control the muting and such. But I also think that it's important to have somebody guiding the conversation. And so if there's a larger group and everybody's on mute, just to be respectful to whoever is speaking, that definitely helps. And then as the leader of the meeting, to be able to say, okay, Steve, we'd like to hear from you. Could you unmute and share with us? And guiding the conversation can really make it a more productive meeting, as opposed to it being a free-for-all conversation, because those free-for-all conversations that people once had in an office space are not as easy to have over video, because we aren't picking up everyone's voices when they're overlapping one another. And so I find that if there is a host to a meeting that is leading the meeting in terms of covering the agenda and the topics that need to be covered, and also guiding whose turn it is to participate, really helps make it a more productive meeting.
And I will say, I work in state government, and having open meetings in state government is a really interesting thing, because each state is going to have slightly different rules that oversee having virtual meetings. And knowing those rules ahead of time
Mhm.
and doing some research on that is something that you could do, and make sure you're following any kind of regulations on those. For our state, we have to have any kind of a telephonic meeting, you have to have video presentation, and so that you can actually see that person give their vote. So knowing those rules
Mhm.
and regulations around any kind of official meetings like that is something you should really look into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I also know that Zoom has a recording feature, and many of the other platforms do as well. And I think it's just etiquette to let everyone on the call know that it's being recorded, so that everyone is aware of that as well.
Exactly.
Steve,
Yeah.
are there any last minute tips or thoughts you wanted to share?
Try to look into the camera as much as you can as well, just as if you're being interviewed on TV, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a very, very good tip. I think it's one thing to be looking at the screen, as opposed to maybe the camera that's just a slightly above. But it's another thing when people are totally distracted and looking at other things, right? Because then their distraction bleeds into other people becoming other people's distractions, because people are thinking, what are they looking at? What are they
Yeah.
doing? Right? And
And don't be afraid to turn off your video. If you know you're going to be distracted, if you know you're going to be dealing with other things, feel free to mute your line and take yourself off the video camera if you're on with a number of people. Don't be afraid to do that. So I see a lot of people do that, and I understand that's probably just what they're dealing with at that time.
yeah, yeah. I am such a people person, so I really prefer to look at the person when I'm talking, as opposed to a camera directly. Steve, everything that you talked about are things that people aren't necessarily able to sit around and have conversations about, right? But it's important and it's helpful. And so these might be temporary conditions for some businesses, but I think that this working virtually is going to possibly be a wave of the future. And so it's important for us all to be kind of preparing and thinking about the impact that this new style of working is going to have on our professionalism. So
Exactly.
well,
I
this
do.
has been really great, Steve. Thank you so much for your time today and for chatting about this. I hope that we can bring some value to other people who have been, kind of floundering a little bit with this whole concept of video conferencing. So,
I hope so too. I hope people got something out of it. Thanks a lot.
yeah, thank you again.